Do you want your foes to fall down because of your mere presence while obeying your commands? Do you want to be one of the best support characters, but not actually doing any direct support to your allies? Do you want to be the best crowd controller on and off stage? Then this is the build for you. Hey guys, it's Warners and I'm back with another build video for you today. So today, I'm very excited for this build. In my opinion, this build probably has the most effects on enemies per round than any build I've done so far, and probably any build I do in the future. The amount of enemies you can affect in one round and the amount of debilitations you can do is insane. The damage per round is definitely not going to be super high, but this build is doing so much to make everyone else's DPR a lot higher. So even if you're not doing a lot of damage yourself, trust me, your friends are going to be doing an insane amount of damage. Also, surprisingly, this build is one of the best builds I've made at preventing enemies from doing damage to your allies. I definitely would not call it a tank build, but oh my gosh, it's going to be really hard for enemies to hit your allies and yourself. Especially when we get to higher levels, the end game is insane for this build. And I'll cut to the chase a little bit. This definitely is going to be mostly a Glamour Bard build. The Glamour Bard, based on this poll I did recently, is definitely one of the more popular Bard subclasses, at least amongst my community. And one of the things that really encourages me about this is the fact that the Glamour Bard doesn't really add a lot of direct damage boosts. That means that my community and I share a lot of the same values when it comes to character builds. Control can be way more effective than damage in a lot of cases, and can also be really fun. So this is definitely going to be a build for you guys. And it makes me think of, if you don't watch the YouTube channel Insight Check, Jeremy over there made this really great video basically talking about how damage isn't everything, and sometimes the vibes per round is a bit more important than the damage per round. This build definitely has a lot of vibes per round, you could say. So getting into it, I'll go ahead and tell you the species option. We are going to be going with Aasimar. First of all, the Aasimar is resistant to radiant and necrotic damage, which is a nice little resistance, mostly the necrotic damage. But this video being filmed in January, the new monster manual still hasn't come out yet, but we've seen some previews. And if you guys didn't see the recent sneak peek from Colby from D4 D&D Deep Dive, he did a reveal of the Empyrean stat block. It seems as though typical good monsters are going to have a higher chance to be something the parties fight. And so I could see radiant resistance having a little bit more importance than it previously did. Also, the Aasimar gets a extra healing option that's an action. I feel like on a bard it's probably best used out of combat, but that's nice to get a little extra healing hands. As a magic action, you get a roll d4 is equal to your proficiency bonus. So at high level, it's up to 64s as an action healing. That's not bad. But then you get Celestial Revelation. I'll go ahead and read it for you. When you reach character level 3, you can transform as a bonus action using one of the options below. Choose the option each time you transform. The transformation lasts for 1 minute or until you end it, no action required. Once you transform, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. Once on each of your turns before the transformation ends, you can deal extra damage to one target when you deal damage to it with an attack or spell. The extra damage equals your proficiency bonus, and the extra damage type is either necrotic for necrotic shroud or radiant for heavenly wings and inner radiance. Here are the transformation options. So we have Heavenly Wings. 2 spectral wings sprout from your back temporarily. Until the transformation ends, you have a fly speed equal to your speed. That's very nice. We have Inner Radiance. Searing light temporarily radiates from your eyes and mouth. For the duration, you shed bright light in a 10-foot radius and dim light for an additional 10 feet. At the end of each of your turns, each creature within 10 feet of you takes radiant damage equal to your proficiency bonus. And then we have Necrotic Shroud. Your eyes briefly become pools of darkness and flightless wings sprout from your back temporarily. Creatures other than your allies within 10 feet of you must succeed on a charisma saving throw, DC 8 plus your charisma modifier and proficiency bonus, or have the frightened condition until the end of your next turn. So we get 3 great options. I would say for this build, we're probably going to use Heavenly Wings and Necrotic Shroud the most, because fly speed is great to have, especially as early as level 3. And then Necrotic Shroud is an AoE fear, which is also very good. And unlike a lot of species abilities, this one is specifically based off your charisma. So the fact that we are a charisma caster helps a lot. And then the background we're going to be taking is Wayfarer. You get skill proficiencies in Insight and Stealth, which are fine skill skills to have, and then you also get proficiency in Thieves Tools. But the main reason we're going for this is to get the Lucky Feat. We've taken the Lucky Feat on a lot of builds, so I won't go into a lot of detail, but you get proficiency bonus times per long rest, rerolls for d20s, and normally we use this so we can get advantage on attack rolls, but actually in this build we're mostly going to be doing saving throw based spells. So what we're using this for is a thing that you might have forgotten that you can do with the Lucky Feat, and that is when someone attacks you with an attack roll ability, you can impose disadvantage on the attack. So that'll be great, especially because this character's AC is never going to be that high, so it's going to be nice to be able to impose disadvantage on attacks. And then we're going to be taking a +2 in charisma and a +1 in dexterity with that background. And for our stats, we're using point buy, of course. We're going to have an 8 strength. With that +1 in dexterity, we're going to have a 16 dexterity, a 15 constitution, 8 intelligence, 8 wisdom, and with that +2 in charisma, we're going to have a 17 charisma. I would try your best to get studded leather, and you're probably going to be using that through most of the build unless you pick magic armor or something. And then of course we're going to be taking Bard as the class. I'm imagining this character to be a female Aasimar that plays her harp. I feel like harp is a great instrument to use for a Aasimar. You know, it's very fitting with the traditional depictions of angelic beings. She's just gonna have this sort of otherworldly presence to her. Have the sort of rock star aesthetics, but still be grounded in a fantasy setting. And the official artwork of the Glamour Bard that came out with the recent Player's Handbook very much inspired the look for this character. But instead of being an elf, I definitely went more for the Aasimar, and that's why instead of you having a lute, it's more of a harp. I feel like that just adds a little bit of flavor to it to make it a little bit different than the art in the book. But now that we have all that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and go to D&D Beyond and get more into the nitty gritty of all the options we chose. All right, so for our core bard traits, we're picking Arcana, Performance, and Intimidation for our skills. And this is on top of already having Insight and Stealth from our background. For instruments, I'm just going to use the harp. I think a lute and a lyre is cool secondary instruments to know, but yeah, we're going to be using the harp, basically. We get proficiency in simple weapons, but I'm not going to be using any of them, and we're just going to be sticking with the light armor throughout this whole build. For spells, just so you know, I'm sharing from levels 1 to 6 in one go, so I'm going to include second level spells, but we're going to pick up Friends, Minor Illusion, Vicious Mockery for cantrips. For spells, we're going to have Bane, Color Spray, Dissonant Whispers, Healing Word, Long Strider, and then for second level spells, we're going to have Aid, Invisibility, Fear, Hypnotic Pattern, and Slow. And then expertise, I'm going to go with Stealth and Performance. So you can go with any expertise that you want. I just feel like in my game, stealth is very important a lot of the time, and performance is just very thematic, I feel like, with this character being a very flashy bard. And then at level 2, we get Jack of all trades, which allows us to have half proficiency in all skills. Really underrated bard feature that I feel like a lot of people forget about. Depending on your game, if you make a lot of skill checks, this might even be worth just a 2-level dip in bard. I almost forgot to mention Bardic Inspiration. Most people know what Bardic Inspiration is, but basically you get these dice that you can give to your allies. They can use them to boost their d20 tests. One thing that's really unique about Bard and Bardic Inspiration, the amount of Bardic Inspiration you have is determined based on your charisma modifier. A lot of these abilities are level based, or you get more the more levels you go in. The Bardic Inspiration die does get higher the more Bard levels you go in, but you always only have your charisma modifier amount, if that makes sense. The die becomes a d8 at level 5, a d10 at level 10, a d12 at level 15. So goes up to a d12 eventually. And almost every bard subclass has a secondary use of Bardic Inspiration. So does this one, and we're going to get to that here in a second. So like I already mentioned, we're going to go with the College of Glamour for 3rd level. And we get 2 abilities right away. We get Mantle of Inspiration and Beguiling Magic. Beguiling Magic, I think, is really fun. It says you always have the Charm Person and Mirror Image spells prepared. In addition, immediately after you cast an enchantment or illusion spell using a spell slot, you can cause a creature you can see within 60 feet of yourself to make a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC. On a failed save, the target has the charmed or frightened condition, your choice, for 1 minute. The target repeats the save at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself on a success. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. You can also restore your use of it by expending 1 use of your Bardic Inspiration. No action required. So anytime you use a spell slot, remember that very specifically you have to consume a spell slot to use this. You can then then no action required, charm or frighten a creature within 60 feet of yourself. I feel like this ability could be easily overlooked because a lot of people, when they think of the charm condition, they usually think about it in the context of the charm person spell or various other charm spells. And one thing I would like to point out is the charm condition by itself is really, really good. And with this specific ability, the only way for the charm condition to go away on the target is if they succeed on the saving throw that they make at the end of their turn. A lot of abilities like charm person, if you or your allies do damage to them, the charm will end. This ability says nothing of the sort. So with this ability, this is what will happen to creatures you charm. Charm condition. While you have the charm condition, you experience the following effect. Can't harm the charmer. You can't attack the charmer or target the charmer with damaging abilities or magical effects. The charmer has advantage on any ability check to interact with you socially. So keep this in mind. It specifically says if they are charmed, they can't attack you or target the charmer with damaging abilities or magical effects. So think about this. If you charm a wizard and you are then standing with your allies and the wizard wants to cast fireball on you and your allies, they can't target you, which means any AoE effect that affects you, they'll have to make it so it doesn't affect you, which could in turn protect your friends as well. But then check this out. It says once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. You can also restore your use of it by expending one use of your bardic inspiration, no action required. So there we go, we got a second use of bardic inspiration. I'm gonna assume we're using this every time we have the chance. We also get mantle of inspiration. You can weave fey magic into a song or dance to fill others with vigor. As a bonus action, you can expend a use of bardic inspiration. Rolling a bardic inspiration die, when you do so, choose a number of other creatures within 60 feet of yourself, up to a number equal to your charisma modifier, minimum of one creature. Each of those creatures gains a number of temporary hit points equal to 2 times the number rolled on the bardic inspiration die, and then each can use its reaction to move up to its speed without provoking opportunity attacks. So as a bonus action, you can make allies within 60 feet of yourself be able to disengage on your turn, and they get temporary hit points. So this is great to get your allies out of a tough spot. And then at level 4, we get a ability score improvement or feat. I'm gonna go Warcaster, and this is gonna have a lot of synergy with our level 6 feature. So we're gonna get our charisma to 18, and then we have advantage on constitution saving throws to maintain concentration on spells, and then we get reactive spell. When a creature provokes an opportunity attack from you by leaving your reach, you can take a reaction to cast a spell at the creature rather than making an opportunity attack. The spell must have a casting time of 1 action and must target only that creature. And then you can perform the somatic components of spells even if you have a weapon or shield in both of your hands. We're not going to be taking much advantage of the somatic components. Maybe later we'll have a cool magic item that this will help us with, but for now, ignore that part. Level 5, we get Font of Inspiration. You now regain all expended uses of Bardic Inspiration when you finish a short or long rest. In addition, you can expend a spell slot, no action required, to regain 1 expended use of Bardic Inspiration. So think about this. If you want to use Beguiling Magic and you're out of Bardic Inspiration, you can, no action required, use a spell slot to gain 1 expended use of Bardic Inspiration, and then you can, no action required, use a Bardic Inspiration to use Beguiling Magic. So how Beguiling Magic is worded, it seems like a very limited resource, but basically it's a thing that you can use your Bardic Inspiration with, and you get 1 free use per day is how I view it. And then at level 5, you can now use spell slots to use that ability. And then level 6, this ability is one of my favorite abilities that this subclass offers, but it also has one annoying thing about it. So we have Mantle of Majesty. You always have the command spell prepared. As a bonus action, you can cast command without expending a spell slot, and you take on an unearthly appearance for 1 minute until your concentration ends. During this time, you can cast command as a bonus action without expending a spell slot. Any creature charmed by you automatically fails its saving throw against the command you cast with this feature. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish the long rest. You can also restore your use of it by expending a level 3 spell slot, no action required. So this ability is really good. You're able to cast commands as a bonus action for free. It doesn't cost spell slots. And because it doesn't cost spell slots, you can cast a regular leveled spell with your action. So for example, you could cast a spell like Dissonant Whispers as your action. It is an enchantment spell, so you can then charm someone with Beguiling Magic. And then as a bonus action, you can cast command on a creature, all with just an action and bonus action at level 6. But Mantle of Majesty requires your concentration. which I understand why it does. Having command as a bonus action for a minute every round is really, really, really good. So I understand why it requires concentration. It just kind of limits its use to a certain extent. I think Mantle of Majesty is very good to use in single target situations. And there's sort of an elephant in the room that I need to bring up, but I'll go ahead and bring it up when I talk about the DPR, or how we'll refer to this next segment here. This is more the vibes per round, I'll go with. We'll call this the VPR. Let's do that. That sounds fun. Okay, I wanted to show you this real quick. Again, this is based off of the 2014 rules as well as the books that came after that. They include those monsters in as well. This is a chart to show the percentage of monsters that have certain condition immunities. So it even says it right here at the beginning. The most common conditions monsters are immune to are charmed, frightened, and poisoned. So right here we have charmed, 23% are immune. And then over here we have frightened, 24% are immune. And definitely, as you get higher levels, the higher CR creatures are going to be the ones that are immune to charmed and frightened. It says right here, constructs, 2/3 are immune to frightened and charmed. Celestials, over half are immune to charmed and frightened. Undead, half are immune to charm. And right here, you can also see higher CRs. Oh my gosh, there's too much information, so it's hard to piece it all together. But like, for example, CR 11, 32% of monsters are immune to frightened. CR 11, 30% are immune to charmed. So that gives you sort of like an idea. I'll put this in the description so you guys can look at all this. Again, this is the 2014 Monster Manual and source books after. This is not the 2024 Monster Manual. That comes out next month. Hopefully we can get someone on it to make a graph similar to this when that book comes out. Something to keep in mind though, that still leaves 75% of monsters in the Monster Manual that are not immune to frightened or charmed. And then right here, if you look at the Ancient Green Dragon stat block that we got a sneak peek of already, and you look at immunities, he's immune to poison and poisoned. That's it. You can charm and frighten an Ancient Green Dragon. So charmed and frightened is still very useful even at high levels. Not only that, let's look at command. You speak a one-word command to a creature you can see within range. The target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or follow the command on its next turn. Choose the command from these options. And then you have approach, drop, flee, grovel, or halt. This is not the charm condition. It doesn't say, like, for example, some abilities say if they are immune to charmed, it doesn't affect the creature. This doesn't say that. Command literally works on any creature in the game. Very important to keep that in mind. All right, for the level 6 VPR, first of all, we're gonna cast Longstrider before combat starts. This is gonna make it so that our movement speed is 40 feet. I'm gonna assume throughout this whole build that we're casting Longstrider. Round 1, I'm gonna cast Mirror Image on myself. Mirror Image is an enchantment spell, so I can use Beguiling Magic, and I can try to charm or frighten a creature. I'm gonna try to charm a creature. It's gonna be whatever creature is closest to me, and I'm gonna try to get within melee range of said creature. Once I'm within melee range, I'm going to then use Mantle of Majesty to bonus action cast command. If they're charmed, command will automatically work. If they are not charmed, they'll still roll a save and hopefully they fail. If they fail, the command I'm going to give is to flee, so they have to use all their movement to run away from me. This will activate Warcaster to where I can reaction cast Vicious Mockery on them. Again, command happens on their turn, so I'll have to wait till their turn comes up to reaction cast Vicious Mockery. If I want to cast a leveled spell, I totally can as well. I'm just choosing to cast Vicious Mockery, just have a nice little debuff on them so that it'll be harder for them to attack an ally. And then round 2, this is where it becomes really fun. So they ran away from me with their action on their turn. It is now my turn again. Hopefully with my 40 feet of movement, I can get right up to them again. If they're a bit faster than me, then maybe not. I don't know if they would necessarily dash. Let me know down in the comments if you think they would use their action to dash or if they would just use their action to move their regular movement. Hopefully we can get up to them though. Let's say we get up to them. We then action cast Dissonant Whispers. One creature of your choice that you can see within range hears a discordant melody in its mind. The target makes a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, it takes 3d6 psychic damage and must immediately use its reaction, if available, to move as far away from you as it can, using the safest route. On a successful save, the target takes half as much damage only. So first of all, this is a half damage on a save spell, which is great. So they're going to take damage no matter what. But if they fail, they're going to instantly use their reaction to run away from me, which will then activate my reaction and I can cast Vicious Mockery on them again. But I still have my bonus action available. So what I'm going to do as my bonus action is I'm going to cast Command. But the command I'm going to give to them is Approach. So they have to run back to me after running away from me because of Dissonant Whispers. This way I don't have to chase them around everywhere, and I also waste their reaction and their action. So as long as they fail everything, their action and reaction is gone, I'm getting to do Vicious Mockery and Dissonant Whispers to them every turn, and they have disadvantage on any attack roll they make on their next turn if they, for example, succeed against the save on command. And this whole time, every round, Dissonant Whispers is as well an enchantment spell, so I'm able to charm them, or charm a different creature within 60 feet, or frighten a different creature within 60 feet, or frighten them. So I'm eating up their action economy, making it so they can't do the things they want to do. And you know what's also great about this? Depending on where my allies are standing, my allies could also be making opportunity attacks against them. And then for round 3 and 4, I'm going to be doing this same thing. My average DPR here at level 6 for a single target is only going to be 14.1 DPR, but the vibes per round are astronomical. Wasting a single target's actions and reactions, having a chance to charm or frighten them every single turn, I think that's great. As far as in an AoE situation, for my action, I'm going to cast Bane, Fear, or Slow. Bane is the anti-bless. It makes it so 3 targets have to make a wisdom saving throw, and if they fail, they have to subtract a d4 on any of their d20 rolls. Fear is great because they drop whatever they're holding and run away from you. And then Slow is great because even though it's not an enchantment or illusion spell, it's a transmutation spell. It makes it so that they can either do an action, bonus action, or reaction. Their AC is -2 and their movement is halved. So really great debilitations that you can do on a lot of enemies. But no matter what spell I go with, I'm gonna be doing a similar thing as single target, but instead of using command, because I'm concentrating on a different spell, I can't do Mantle of Majesty. We're going to be casting Dissonant Whispers and reaction casting Vicious Mockery, and we're just going to keep running over to them. And since it's multiple targets, we can just switch the target every turn if we want to. And for example, if we have Bane on them, it'll be a lot higher chance for us to hit Dissonant Whispers and Vicious Mockery, because it'll lower their saving throws by 1d4. And because of that, even though we're only doing single target damage still, because we're concentrating on Bane, it'll actually do a little bit more damage. It'll be 16.8 DPR. So you do slightly more damage, just 2 more damage, but you also help your allies being able to hit targets better if they're baned. And also the targets, when they try to hit your allies, they have to subtract that d4. But in the single target scenario, you're making it so one target can't use its action every turn as long as they fail their saving throw on command. So it really just depends on the situation, and that's why I'm giving multiple DPRs and multiple VPRs, just so you can kind of know what options you have for every level tier. And now let's go ahead and go into level 7. All right, so we're gonna try our best to rush to 20 charisma. So at level 7, we go Bard again. We get Counter Charm, which is a little bit better than it was in 2014. You can use musical notes or words of power to disrupt mind influencing effects. If you or a creature within 30 feet of you fails a saving throw against an effect that applies the charmed or frightened condition, you can take a reaction to cause the save to be re-rolled, and the new roll has advantage. So as a reaction, you can save someone from being charmed or frightened, which is really cool. One of the things you could actually do with this, let's say you're casting Fear and one of your allies is within the AoE and you don't want them to be feared, you could use your reaction on your own ability to be able to make it so that your ally hopefully doesn't get charmed. It's kind of funny. This is sort of careful spell meta magic, but for your fear and charm effects only. You also get access to more spells, but we'll get to that in a second. And then level 8, we're gonna go for +2 in charisma. And so now our charisma is at a nice 20. And then we're actually gonna do a little bit of multi-classing, just a little though. This is for a couple reasons. First of all, we like Vicious Mockery, but there's a different cantrip cantrip we would like to have access to that we would eventually get with magical secrets, but I decided to go Warlock because there's a subclass that we're eventually going to pick up. But here at level 1, we're trying to get access to the Mind Sliver spell. Mind Sliver says this: you try to temporarily sliver the mind of one creature you can see within range. The target must succeed on an intelligence saving throw, taking 1d6 psychic damage, and subtract 1d4 from the next saving throw it makes before the end of its next turn. So Mind Sliver is basically Bane, but specifically for saving throws. And because almost all the spells we're going to be casting are saving throw spells, and also the fact that this is the same damage as Vicious Mockery anyway, it's nice to be able to choose between them. There are some situations where you want to make your next saving throw easier to land, and there's some situations where you want that creature to have disadvantage on attack rolls. And then definitely pick up Eldritch Blast. Why not pick up Eldritch Blast? It's a great spell, and maybe you just want to do a lot of damage to creatures far away from you. Might as well pick it up. And then I decided to pick up Armor of Agathis, mostly just because Armor of Agathis is a great spell, and Warlocks are the only class that has access to it. So since we're already going into Warlock, we might as well pick it up. And then Cause Fear and Hex. Hex is the same reason as Armor of Agathis. It's also an enchantment spell, so that's nice because if we ever used it, it would trigger Beguiling Magic. So yeah, Cause Fear is also nice too. It's a single target fear effect, and bards don't get access to this normally, except with magical secrets, so might as well pick it up. Why not? And then we're gonna take 2 levels in Warlock, so we actually get access to 3 Eldritch Invocations. D&D Beyond doesn't have the ability to pick a cantrip where you put Agonizing Blast on it, except for Eldritch Blast. If you're wanting to do more damage and you feel like you're not going to be using Mind Sliver that much, definitely pick Eldritch Blast for Agonizing Blast, but we're going to be picking Agonizing Blast for Mind Sliver. We're going to be casting Mind Sliver a lot in this build, and to add that extra 5 damage to Mind Sliver, why not? And then I decided to go Pact of the Chain. The main reason for this is Pact of the Blade isn't going to help us at all, and Pact of the Tome isn't really going to help us at all either, especially because we're going to get magical secrets soon anyway. So I decided to pick Pact of the Chain, and I'm going to specifically be taking the Sphinx of Wonder. I talked about the Sphinx of Wonder in a previous build, my Celestial Warlock build to be specific. I'm specifically taking it for this ability it has. It can use it twice per day. It's called Burst of Ingenuity. The trigger is the Sphinx or another creature within 30 feet makes an ability check or saving throw. Response: the Sphinx adds 2 to the roll. Having 2 to a saving throw roll I think is great. And then also Sphinx of Wonder has 24 HP. It has a 40-foot fly speed. It has a decent amount of damage resistance. It's +5 in stealth, dark vision. It has magic resistance. If I really want it to attack things, it has a decent attack ability. But adding +2 to a saving throw twice per day, why not? And then I decided to take lessons at the first ones. This makes it so you can take an origin feat, and I just decided why not pick Tough. As a spellcaster with a lower AC that plans to be in melee combat, it'd be nice to have a little bit more HP than the average spellcaster. In the Magical Cunning, we can get a spell slot back once per long rest, and we're obviously going to be getting the pack slots back every short rest anyway, so it's nice to have another way to get even more spell slots back. And what's great is we can use these spell slots for stuff like Bardic Inspiration and Beguiling Magic, so yes. Having more spell slots is good. And then for the final level, we're going to go back into Bard and we're going to get Expertise at level 9 and 3rd level spells. We're picking Intimidation and Insight for our Expertise. I just feel like those are fitting. And then honestly, the build is already pretty together at level 6, but this is where the controlling aspect of this build goes up to 11. So these 3 spells, Psychic Lance, Synaptic Static, and Yolande's Regal Presence, are going to be a part of this build almost all the way to level 20. So this is from Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. Psychic Lance, basically a target 120 feet away makes an intelligence saving throw. On a failed save, they take 76 psychic damage, half damage on a save, but if they fail, they also just have the incapacitated condition, which is amazing. That's a huge debuff. And then Synaptic Static, fireball sized 20-foot radius sphere, and they make an intelligence saving throw and take 8d6 psychic damage, or half as much on a save. And then during that time, they subtract a d6 from all attack rolls and ability checks, as well as any constitution save to maintain concentration on spells. And then they make an intelligence save on each of their turns ending the effect on success, but that effect does not require concentration. So this is a D6 subtracted from their attack rolls and ability checks that it's added on to Bane if you use Bane. And if you cast Mind Sliver only affects saving throws, but Constitution saving throws to maintain concentrations on spells or saving throws. So if you Bane a spellcaster, cast Synaptic Static on them, and cast Mind Sliver on them, they're taking a minus 2d4 and a minus a d6 to maintain concentration on spells. That's pretty crazy. And then we have a brand new spell from this book. We have Yolande's Regal Presence. You surround yourself with unearthly majesty in a 10-foot emanation. Whenever the emanation enters the space of a creature you can see, and whenever a creature you can see enters the emanation or ends its turn there, you can force that creature to make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, the target takes 46 psychic damage and has the prone condition. And you can, if you want, you don't have to, and you can push it up to 10 feet away. On a successful save, the target takes half as much damage only. A creature makes the save only once per turn. That's when you enter their space or they enter your space. So if you really wanted to, you could cast Command, have them approach you on their turn, and then they take the damage twice in a round. I will now tell you the downside of Synaptic Static Yolande's Regal Presence though. Their damage does not go up with upcasting. So Yolande's Regal Presence is always 46 psychic damage, and Synaptic Static is always 86 psychic damage. Psychic Lance though, it only affects one target, but it does upcast. You add a d6 for any slot level above 4th. These are all enchantment spells as well, so Beguiling Magic works on all of these spells. Really great synergy in my opinion. Yolande's Regal Presence though is a concentration spell, so you cannot use it and Mantle of Majesty at the same time. All right, let's go ahead and go over the level 11 VPR. Okay, the single target situation for level 11 is very similar. We keep using the Dissonant Whispers, proccing a opportunity attack thing, but instead of casting Vicious Mockery, now we're casting Mind Sliver. And Mind Sliver now adds our charisma and damage to the attack. But round 1, we cast Mirror Image yet again. Mirror Image doesn't require concentration, so that's a nice little defensive buff. Bonus action command Flee, reaction Mind Sliver, and then the whole bonus action command Approach, Dissonant Whispers, reaction Mind Sliver. We do that for all 4 rounds. I calculated the Mind Sliver in the DPR so that any spell cast after casting Mind Sliver has that minus 1d4 to the saving throw. Again, one of your party members could cast a spell before you do, but if anything, their spell will probably do more damage. So keep that in mind. For single target, we're at 24 DPR. So I did make one mistake when calculating this damage. Dissonant Whispers can actually upcast, but because I was so used to the other spells similar to this not upcasting, I didn't calculate Dissonant Whispers as being upcast. So just know that the damage is probably higher, but that's also not the point of this build anyway, so I digress. And now I'm actually going to have 2 different AoE scenarios. One is for using Bane, and one is for using Yolande's Regal Presence. I would imagine that in a caster heavy party, the Bane scenario would be more beneficial, but in a specifically melee martial group, Yolande's Regal Presence would be more beneficial. But also the Yolande's Regal Presence scenario, you will be doing more damage, so just keep that in mind. From here on out, for any AoE discussion, I'm going to be assuming 3 targets. I could see AoE scenarios very likely being more than 3 targets, but we're just going to go with that because I've been doing that in a lot of my videos. So in the Bane scenario, round 1, we cast Bane. I can't really do anything with my bonus actions or reactions because I'm not casting Mantle of Majesty or using Dissonant Whispers, so this round, no damage. Then round 2, I cast Synaptic Static, which does 76 DPR, which is pretty hefty. And then round 3, I switched to doing the Dissonant Whispers reaction Mind Sliver thing, but keeping in mind that these enemies are most likely baned and most likely failed Synaptic Static, so they're not being able to hit targets very easily. And then now that I'm Mind Slivering them and using Dissonant Whispers on them, it's wasting their reaction and they're getting yet another debilitation to their saving throws. And then all 4 of these rounds, remember, I'm casting enchantment spells, so I'm able to use Beguiling Magic to charm or frighten creatures. So that DPR is a little bit more than single target. It's at 33.2 DPR. But now we have the Yolande's Regal Presence this situation. I'll mention something real quick. Earlier I mentioned using command with Yolande's Regal Presence. I was meaning it as a regular action because you wouldn't be able to use Mantle of Majesty and Yolande's Regal Presence together because they both require concentration. But anyway, round 1 you cast Yolande's Regal Presence, and again you can use Beguiling Magic to charm someone. Any creature that gets within 10 feet of you makes this saving throw to take the damage. So I'm still using 3 targets, but you're going to be able to get a lot more than 3 targets in my opinion. With 40 feet of movement, I think you'll be doing pretty good. And then round 2, you're going to be doing the same thing, Dissonant Whispers with a reaction Mind Sliver, but now that you have Yolande's Regal Presence up, you are passively doing damage as long as you're within range of them. And you do that for round 3 and 4 as well. But this ups the damage to 63.7 DPR, which is actually pretty good, especially considering all the other effects you're having on the battlefield. And remember, every time they fail a saving throw on Yolande's Regal Presence, they are knocked prone, and I have the option to push them 10 feet back. And that's level 11. Let's go ahead and go into level 12. Okay, right away, I'm going to be going into Warlock, and we're actually going to be picking the Archfey patron. I had a little back and forth on what patron I would go with. If you really want to, you could totally go Great Old One. One of the benefits of Great Old One is with the Psychic Spells trait, your Warlock spells that are enchantment or illusion spells, you could now use without verbal or somatic components. Unfortunately, it's specifically only Warlock spells, but a lot of the spells we're using are pretty low level, just upcast. So you could, for example, take Dissonant Whispers as a Warlock spell. You could take Bane as a Warlock spell, and then you could cast it without using verbal or somatic components. But the reason I took Archfey is in the scenarios where you're not using Mantle of Majesty, the Steps of the Fae feature is a great thing to use your bonus action for, and it is yet another way to debuff your enemies. For those who don't know, you get your Charisma modifier in free uses of Misty Step that don't require a spell slot to use. So we already with 20 Charisma get 5 free Misty Steps for long rest, and when we use it, we can choose 2 options. We can use Refreshing Step. Immediately after you teleport, you or one creature you can see within 10 feet of yourself gains 1d10 temporary hit points. That's a great little buff option. But we're interested in Taunting Step. Creatures within 5 feet of the space you left must succeed on a Wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC, or have disadvantage on attack rolls against creatures other than you until the start of your next turn. So you already have ways to make it hard to hit you, but then you can make it so that they have disadvantage to attack anyone but you, and then you can teleport away from them and run away from them if you really want to, and make it so that it's hard for them to hit anyone. So that's great. You also get access to Combo Motions, Fairy Fire, Misty Step, Phantasmal Force, and Sleep. Almost all of those are enchantment and illusion spells, so it's great synergy with the rest of your build you have going. And then at level 10, we get Magical Secrets. This really opens up any bard options. You now have the spell lists of Cleric, Druids, and Wizards. The whole spell list, which is crazy. And I'll go into spells here in a second, but level 11, you get access to level 6 spells, and then level 12, we get an ability score improvement. With all this mobility we already have, I decided we might as well add more. So I decided to pick Speedy for my feet. This also makes our Constitution score more even. Our speed increases by 10 feet. When you take the dash action on your turn, difficult terrain doesn't cost extra movement for the rest of that turn, and agile movement, opportunity attacks have disadvantage against you. So that's amazing, especially when we're using Yolande's Regal Presence and we're running around everywhere. It's great to get disadvantage on opportunity attacks. And then at level 13, we get access to 7th level spells. And then we get Unbreakable Majesty at level 14. As a bonus action, you can assume a magically majestic presence for 1 minute or until you have the incapacitated condition. For the duration, whenever a creature hits you with an attack roll for the first time on a turn, the attacker must succeed on a charisma saving throw against your spell save DC, or the attack misses instead, and the creature recoils from your majesty. So just a few levels after we get Steps of the Fae, we now get Unbreakable Majesty, which makes it so that it's even harder for people to hit us. I think that's amazing. So with Steps of the Fae, we're making it so that they have disadvantage on attack rolls against our allies, and this makes it so it's hard for them to hit us. Okay, because you get access to literally the Druid, Cleric, and Wizard spell lists, you can pick up so many good spells. And if you want to just do damage, pick up like Fireball or something, I don't know, pick up whatever whatever you want. But what I'm doing specifically for this build, I'm definitely going to pick up shield because it'd be nice to have even more defense when I need it. But I'm going to be picking up Tasha's Mind Whip. This is one of those weird spells that is surprisingly not on the Bard spell list. Tasha's Mind Whip is so good for this build. First of all, it's an enchantment spell. It's on brand by doing psychic damage, and it has a debuff on creatures it attacks, and it requires an intelligence saving throw. And if I haven't said already, intelligence saving throws are one of the best saving throws to have on spells because most creatures don't have a high intelligence. I'll go ahead and read it. You psychically lash out at one creature you can see within range. The target must make an intelligence saving throw. On a failed save, the target takes 3d6 psychic damage, and it can't take a reaction until the end of its next turn. Moreover, on its next turn, it must choose whether it gets a move, an action, or a bonus action. It only gets one of the three. On successful save, the target takes half as much damage and suffers none of the spell's other effects. And then this is my favorite part about it. When you cast the spell using a spell slot of 3rd level or higher, you can target one additional creature for each slot level above 2nd. The creature must be within 30 feet of each other when you target them. This is a level 2 spell that targets one creature. If you upcast it, you can target another creature. This can get to insane amounts of creatures you can target. It doesn't scale in damage like a lot of these spells, but I personally think this debuff is one of the best debuffs in the game for such a low cost, especially with it not requiring concentration. So they immediately lose their reaction, and then they have to choose between an action, bonus action, or movement. Once I get to the VPR breakdown, I'll show you some awesome synergy it has with our other abilities. But then I'm also going to pick up Bestow Curse. This spell is actually a spell that was available to us at earlier levels, but at this level it changes in a big way and becomes way more useful to us. So it says you touch a creature which must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or become cursed for the duration. Until the curse ends, the target suffers one of the following effects of your choice. I'm gonna go with the first one almost all the time. It says choose one ability. The target has disadvantage on ability checks and saving throws made with that ability. I'm gonna pick intelligence most of the time, sometimes wisdom depending on the situation. So they now have disadvantage on all intelligence checks, and most of our spells are intelligence saving throws, which it tends to be low for creatures anyway. But if you notice, it's a concentration spell, but right here it says if you cast this spell using a level 4 spell slot, you can maintain concentration on it for up to 10 minutes. It's normally 1 minute. But here, if you use a level 5 plus spell slot, the spell doesn't require concentration, and the duration becomes 8 hours. Also, they don't make a saving throw at the end of every turn to get rid of this. They just have this until the duration runs out or until it's dispelled. Again, it's on a single target, but this is a really debilitating ability. And if you really want, you can make it so they have disadvantage on attack rolls against you, which doesn't really mesh well with the rest of your abilities. You basically already have that. You can also make it so that at the start of their turns, they have to take the dodge action. It's nice to waste their turn. And then you can also make it so they take 1d8 extra necrotic damage. Those aren't that interesting to me. As far as spells, I forgot to mention Hypnotic Pattern earlier, but that's a great spell to take. You don't need magical secrets for this, but yeah, just take that one. Great for debilitating enemies. But then Mass Suggestion, this is more of an out of combat spell, but it's great. You can charm a ton of creatures all at once. All right, and now that we have that all taken care of, let's go ahead and go for the level 17 VPR. All right, so one of the great benefits of Tasha's Mind Whip is because the damage doesn't go up when you upcast, here at level 17 for single targets, the first round, we're just going to be casting a level 2 Tasha's Mind Whip, and if they fail on their turn, they can only use an action, bonus action, or movement, and they already lost their reaction. So then when we go into Mantle of Majesty and bonus action command them to flee, if they fail that save, then right on their turn, they're gonna use their movement to flee, and that's instantly gonna use their movement, and so now they can't do anything. And we're of course gonna reaction mind sliver them. So they wasted their turn completely and they're mind slivered. Great first round. And then round 2, I'm probably gonna communicate to my party to please don't make them make a saving throw during this following round, because in round 2, I'm going to cast Bestow Curse on them. And I'm hoping that that D4 Mind Sliver helps me out with that Bestow Curse hitting. And now I'm going to make it so that they have disadvantage on intelligence saving throws. And I'm going to bonus action command them to flee. And then obviously reaction Mind Sliver. And then now that they have disadvantage on intelligence saves and they're Mind Slivered, round 3, I'm going to pump up the damage and I'm going to use Psychic Lance. With intelligence saves being really low for creatures anyway, them being Mind Slivered and having disadvantage on intelligence saves, this is very likely going to hit. and that will instantly make them incapacitated. What does incapacitated do, you ask? Well, I'll read it out for you. Incapacitated. Condition. While you have the incapacitated condition, you experience the following effect. Inactive, you can't take any action, bonus action, or reaction. No concentration, your concentration is broken immediately. Speechless, you can't speak. Surprised, if you are incapacitated when you roll initiative, you have disadvantage on the roll. So that's great, but then I'm gonna follow it up with a bonus action command flee. And some of you are probably saying, wait, but you're incapacitated. Incapacitation doesn't say anything about your movement or speed. So even though they're incapacitated, they can still flee, which on their turn will make it so that I can reaction mind sliver them yet again. And then round 4, I'll be doing the same thing, but with a lower level psychic lance, because I used a 7th level and now we're going to be using a 6th level. And the DPR isn't very high at 32.7, but basically completely debilitating all of their action economy. I feel like having a lower DPR isn't that much of a worry. I'm going to quickly go over the Bane situation. One thing that's great about Bane is at first level it does 3 targets, and as you upcast it you can keep selecting more targets. So we're going to Bane however many targets there is, but obviously, like I said previously in the DPR calculations, we're going to assume 3 targets. So we cast Bane, and then we're going to get as close to as many enemies as possible. And then we're going to use Steps of the Fae to cast Misty Step. And now whatever creatures are within 5 feet of us, they now have disadvantage on attack rolls against everyone but me. And with Speedy and Longstrider, my movement speed is 50 feet. So I Misty Step, and then I can move up to 50 feet away. So good luck trying to get to me. And then round 2, we're going to use Synaptic Static on them. And then I probably would have only gone half my movement, or maybe they tried to get to me. So then I'm going to Misty Step again with Steps of the Fae. And then round 3 and 4, I'm going to be doing the same thing, but instead of Synaptic Static, we're going to be using Tasha's Mind Whip. And because they're baned, all of their saving throws are going to be lowered. So we're going to have a lot higher chance to be doing all these effects. And the DPR is 33.5, but keep in mind, round 2, Synaptic Static is doing 76.7 DPR. So pretty good. But then this is my favorite thing that I'm going to be doing at level 17, and that I suggest people doing most of the time, not only because it looks so thematic and cool, but also it does the most damage, and in my opinion it does some of the best debilitation that this build gets. So right in round 1, we cast Yolande's Regal Presence. Remember, if a creature enters the 10-foot emanation, they do the saving throw and take the damage and are knocked prone and push 10 feet back if they fail. If they succeed, they still take half damage. Our movement speed with Longstrider is 50 feet of movement. So we can hit a lot of targets with Yolande's Regal Presence. And then we're gonna use Steps of the Fae to bonus action Misty Step, which if targets are really spread out, we can then Misty Step on top of more targets if we really want to, and use Taunting Step for the other targets. So that's what round 1 looks like. And then round 2, we're gonna do the same thing, hit as many targets as possible. In this calculation, 3 targets. And then we're gonna use Synaptic Static, and this actually is our highest DPR situation for a single round at 108 DPR for Synaptic Static and Yolande's Regal Presence hitting 3 targets. So not only do we do big damage for that round 2, we also made it so they have a minus D6 on attack rolls because of Synaptic Static, and they have disadvantage on attack rolls on everyone but me. And on that first round, instead of Misty Stepping, I used Unbreakable Majesty. Then they'd have to succeed on a Charisma saving throw to even be able to hit me. Then round 3, this is really fun for me. We're going to be using Tasha's Mind Whip. And remember, Tasha's Mind Whip makes it so that if they fail, they can only use an action, bonus action, or movement. And with Yolande's Regal Presence, we're going to be knocking them prone. And so that means that when it comes to their turn, if they fail both saving throws, they can either move, do an action, or bonus action. I asked on Reddit what people think about this. Almost everyone agrees with me that them standing up from prone will count as them using their movement. So now they effectively can't do anything else. They could go the rest of their movement, but them coming up from prone is already choosing movement. So they could stay on the ground and do an action or bonus action, but most likely they would want to stand up. So with Tasha's Mind Whip and Yolande's Regal Presence, we're knocking people back and wasting their turn. And both are doing psychic damage. And then every one of these rounds we're bonus action Misty Stepping so that they have disadvantage on attack rolls against anyone if they happen to get up. Also think about, at this level, you're getting to the point where creatures creatures will have legendary resistance. You're making creatures do 4 saving throws per round. Yolanda's Regal Presence, Tasha's Mind Whip, Steps of the Fae, and then I forget to mention it because I just assume it now. You're using the Beguiling Magic, Frighten, or Charm every round. 4 saving throws every round from just you. That's incredible. And that makes our DPR with Yolanda's Regal Presence 67.7 DPR. All right, for these last 3 levels, a lot happens with our character, but not a lot happens with our strategy. This is also one of the only things that might be a little controversial. So here at level 18, we're gonna go back into Bard, and then we're gonna go into Bard as well for our level 19. And so that makes us a level 19 character, which means we can get our epic boon feats. And I'm gonna pick Boon of Speed and pick Charisma. This will make it so we get a 21 Charisma, and then we get Escape Artist. We can now disengage as a bonus action, which also automatically ends the grappled condition on me. But then I did it for quickness. This makes it so our speed goes up by 30 feet. With Longstrider, Speedy, and this, we now have a base movement speed of 80 feet, and then we can bonus action Misty Step without a spell slot. Crazy mobility. And then this is the one controversial thing. I feel like rules as written, this is possible, but it might not be rules as intended. So if you don't feel like this is correct, then just get your con up or something. Maybe take a different ability score here for your Boon of Speed. But at level 19, you get access to epic boon feats. And there's nothing that says that if you multi-class at level 20 that you can't then take another epic boon feat. We're now going Warlock 4, which gives us access to another ability score improvement. So rules as written, you should now have access to another epic boon feat. So I am going to be going with the Boon of Dimensional Travel. This says immediately after you take an attack action or the magic action, you can teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space you can see. This will do 2 things for us. It'll give us this really cool ability, Blink Steps, which means whenever we do the magic action, we can teleport up to 30 feet. And then we also now get our charisma score up to 22 here at level 20. This makes it so we now have 6 Bardic Inspiration, our spell save DC is 20, and we now have 6 uses of Steps of the Fae instead of 5. Our mobility is through the roof, and based on how Blink Steps is worded, it just says I have to use the magic action or the attack action to teleport 30 feet. So I could potentially, if I use Misty Step, which is a spell that I'm casting, I feel like that would count as a magic action, plus whatever other spell I'm casting. I could Misty Step and then teleport 30 more feet. I have incredible mobility, especially with being able to teleport so much. I also have a walking speed of 80 feet. Just like before, there's some amazing spells you can pick up, but there's 3 I'm going to talk about specifically for this build. Again, like I said, you have access to so many spells. You could do some crazy builds, but I'm going to focus on Befuddlement, Otto's Irresistible Dance, mostly just because it's fitting, and then Holy Aura. So Otto's Irresistible Dance, you select one creature and basically they're charmed and they have to use all their movement to dance, and they have disadvantage on dexterity saving throws and attack rolls, and other creatures have advantage on attack rolls against them, and they have to take an action to maybe succeed against it. So this is just a really debilitating single target spell. But then we have Befuddlement. This is a great spell on a single target. You blast the mind of a creature that you can see within range. The target makes an intelligence saving throw. On a failed save, the target takes 10d12 psychic damage and can't cast spells or take the magic action. At the end of every 30 days, the target repeats the save, ending the effect on a success. The effect can also be ended by Greater Restoration, Heal, or Wish. On a successful save, the target takes half as much damage only. Half damage of 10d12. That's great. And then Holy Aura. This is definitely a spell you want to take if you want to protect your allies more. And also, if you're specifically fighting undead or fiends, it could be very beneficial. For the duration, you emit an aura in a 30-foot emanation. While within the aura, creatures of your choice have advantage on all saving throws, and other creatures have disadvantage on attack rolls against them. In addition, when a fiend or an undead hits an affected creature with a melee attack roll, the attacker must succeed on a constitution saving throw or have the blinded condition until the end of its next turn. So I feel like these spells could all be very useful, and yeah, let's go ahead and go into the level 20 VPR. All right, we're gonna go with the single target scenario. So we're casting Tasha's Mind Whip right away. We're bonus action Mantle of Majesty, going into a command Flee, and we're reaction Mind Slivering them. And of course, you know, Beguiling Magic, we're doing a Charm or a Fear on someone. Round 2, we're doing the same thing we did in the last DPR. We are then casting Bestow Curse on them. Hoping that D4 from Mind Sliver helps a bit, and giving them disadvantage on intelligence saving throws, and then bonus actioning commanding them, and then mind slivering them. And then round 3, they now have disadvantage on intelligence saves, and most likely have that D4 on saving throws from mind sliver. So we're casting befuddlement on them with a much higher likelihood that it succeeds. And then we're bonus actioning commanding them and reaction mind slivering them. And then round 4, we are just gonna pump up that damage, and we're gonna go for Psychic Lance. And again, we're going to bonus action command them and reaction mind sliver them. That single target DPR is 38.7. Keep in mind that Tasha's Mind Whip, Mind Sliver, Befuddlement, and Psychic Lance, they all work on targets even if they're immune to fear or charm. So these can all work on your big bad guy, and these effects are very, very debilitating. And then honestly, for the AoE situations, for using Bane or Yolanda's Regal Presence, they're exactly the same as level 17. But again, remember you have that added mobility, and now your saving throw DC is 20 instead of 19. So the DPR for using Bane and Misty Stepping Around and Synaptic Staticking and Tasha's Mind Whipping is 33.6. And for Yolanda's Regal Presencing with Synaptic Static and Tasha's Mind Whip, we have 68.1 DPR. So yeah, I would say this build is one of the best builds at debilitating enemies. I feel like the Debuff Diva is a really good title for this character. Most of this discussion has been talking about in combat. I would like you to keep in mind that you have a plus 18 to performance, you have a plus 18 to intimidation, you have a plus 15 stealth, you have a plus 9 deception. You're an amazing performer. Your HP is at 203 at level 20. You have the entire spell list of druids, wizards, and clerics, and the bard spell list on top of that. You have some of the craziest mobility I've ever made in a build. And throughout this build, I keep forgetting to mention that you're an Aasimar. You can bonus action gain a fly speed, and your fly speed at this level will be 80 feet because it matches your walking speed. So you have an 80-foot fly speed for 1 minute without concentrating on a spell. That's insane. If you like this build, check out this build right here. And if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing and definitely click that like button. The like button is very good at helping promote my video to more viewers. Thank you all so much. I'm excited for the new monster manual to come out soon, and hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace.